From murals to digital billboards to single-member districts, the town of Mount Pleasant is busy. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I speak exclusively with former town council member Chris Nichols.
Chris!
Good morning.
Good to see you.
It's been a while.
Yes, sir. How
Thank
are
you. Doing well. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Well, let me start off with the obvious, the murals. According to Channel 2, the town council voted in December 4-3 for the murals at Moe's and Smoke Barbecue to come down to a town, due to a town ordinance which was vaguely written. And I know that Mark Smith, which is a town council member right now, brought up the idea of allowing the murals to stay up as public art to the town's police, judicial, and I believe the legal committee on Tuesday. It was unanimously approved by the committee, and I know will be brought up by full council on January 10th. With all the issues going on here,
a lot of issues in Mount Pleasant. Who thought we'd be talking about murals?
Right, and many people are asking, will the real politics stand up?
So, first of all, thanks for allowing me a few minutes with you. And whoever watches this, hello, it's been a while. I'm a civilian now. Murals. Let's go back and make sure we're on the same page. What happened is that somebody, maybe a town official, was cruising along in their automobile or otherwise and went by Moe's, which happens to be not very far from here. It's over on Houston Northcutt. It's not far from City Hall.
Right.
And Moe's did not fare that well in the recent Hurricane Matthew. Their main sign, the Moe's sign on Houston Northcutt, fell over and was dilapidated and remained such for several weeks. I think probably during that process, I'm only speculating here, but it makes some sense, that a town official may have driven by and said, oh, look at the signs down and we have to get it cleaned up. But then they noticed that around the side of the building, on a wall, what I would call the wall, the outside of the building, was a mural of an artistic mural. I mean, there's no question. I mean, Al Capone and I think Miss Monroe and what happened is that the zoning official probably went back to look at the rules and regs that are on the books, and by the rules and the regs had to make the call that was arguably a business sign. But I'm not sure most people, civilian folks, normal folks just going about day to day trying to get home, get through traffic and everything else, would think of it as a sign. They probably thought of it as art. So when they looked at the language of the ordinance, and that's what we have town ordinances, laws.
Right.
It was not. There's no discretion in it, really. And by the way, a zoning official arguably doesn't use discretion. They apply the ordinance, and then if the ordinance is poor, either the town council, but in this case, the Board of Zoning Appeals in December addressed it because there was an appeal from the public, probably from the business owner, saying, hey, look, this is art. This isn't a sign. So the issue came before the Board of Zoning Appeals. A lot of people don't know what that is. I was once a Board of Zoning Appeals member. It's a quasi-judicial group that's appointed by council, and they hear, in essence, they hear requests for variances and other things from the ruling of the town zoning official. And you're right, it was a 4-3 vote, but it was a 4-3 vote to know the mural violated the sign ordinance. Councilman Smith, and I think others, but Smith is who I read about in the paper and otherwise and posted about it, said, look, this doesn't make sense. We need to look at the ordinances here because this is different than a giant, burrito that says 99 cents on Tuesdays after 5 p.m. This is genuinely art. Right. And then we learned that the artist was kind of a big deal, big hoo-ha, and was from a foreign country and was coming down to the Gibbs Museum of Art, and this is really art. So what Mark did is he asked just the other day, this is being taped on Friday?
Right.
So earlier this week, the Police Legal Judicial Committee of Council, I was once a member, took information. And I listened to the entire meeting, and what that committee did, and the committee's a small committee, is asked legal, which is the corporate legal counsel, Mr. Pagliarini and his folks, to come up with some proposed ordinances or direction to then bring to the council as a whole at its next meeting. The one thing that I heard that came out of that I thought was probably an idea that will get some traction is that we have and this was formed during my time on council, what's called the Cultural Arts and Pride Commission, CAP.
Right.
And these are the folks who are appointed, and we want to see public art, whether it's the funky crab down at Shem Creek, or there's an electrical box, and instead of it being stark green, somebody paints something nice on it, and we sort of filter through them. And I think that what's going to come out of council is going to be some sort of a filtration system for stuff like the mural at Moe's. Right. And by the way, there's a barbecue place called Smoke. No charge for that, but it's really good. And they have a similar issue going on. Right. And I think it's going to be the town of Mount Pleasant catching up to kind of an eclectic feel that's been going on in some other places. You travel, I travel a little bit, and you could go to some of the more, some places where, it used to be just like Boulder and Madison, but now it's, a lot of cities are getting into the eclectic feel of some art, public art. The worry folks have is, well, wait a second, what if somebody calls something art, but it's just really, something else? It's pejorative in some way, it offends, or whatever. I'm confident that if we get government out of the way, we allow a panel of just citizens who are appointed, that they'll be able to see, just like everyone else, what is art and what is something that really isn't art. And by the way, I don't think there's going to be a flood of hundreds of requests to paint sides of buildings. But this is an example, I think, where government had good intentions, passed ordinances a while ago, not really applicable or not easily applicable to the current situation, and then government responding. And you pointed out, traffic on Highway 41, that thing's been mired for 5 years, but man, get the ordinance for a mural, boom, we're done in 30 or 60 days. So it's nice that the council has been nimble about this, and that all the council members have an open mind. I'm very pleased. And but that's it in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah. Let me take you
5-minute nutshell.
I know. It's all good. You'll go back and look at it later.
That's right.
Let me take you around the corner to Highway 17.
Yes, sir.
As you know, Charleston County Council said no to digital billboards.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the debate over the digital billboards, what sticks out to you?
Well, a lot. And again, I've been off council now just over a year, but during my time on council, was approached by different groups, including the Adams Outdoor. They have a number, not all of them, but they have a number of the billboards around town, and some other groups. And there's been, it's again, new technology, relative to digital, relative to access, and so forth, versus the old kind of just paper.
Right.
And billboards are a lot like speed humps. You want to divide a community? Boy, talk about a billboard. It's difficult. You run into principles of private. Most of the billboards are on privately owned property. Most of the billboards are sort of grandfathered in. I don't think you could just erect, in fact, I know you can't just erect a billboard in the town of Mount Pleasant at this time. Right. On the other hand, ones that have been there for years and years and years cannot just be chopped down. So they're there. I think there's a couple of things in play. I believe that the companies that have an interest in the billboards feel like they can provide a nicer product, and hopefully, this is what their goal is, make more money by having a digital project. I think that most folks don't want a billboard in their backyard. I don't blame them, I don't. Then there's principles of access to the billboard. A paper billboard, when you go up and it's up there for 30, 60, 90, that's an expensive date. Well, you get 10 seconds out of every minute on a digital, because they flip pictures. Right. That's a lot less expensive. It provides additional access. And you've seen, and I've seen, the use of digital billboards for very important things, like the missing person, or the abducted young person, or head this way, there's a hurricane coming, go that way. So there's a lot of weighing in. What a lot of folks in Mount Pleasant need to know is that, for instance, in the recent deal that was in the paper, that actually wasn't, it was, people go, that's in Mount Pleasant. It actually was not. It was in unincorporated. Well, what does that mean? It means it was in Charleston County, but not in the town of Mount Pleasant. I think what the Mount Pleasant folks did is they received a lot of information. Very few people are going to attend a meeting and go, I'm in favor of billboards. But a lot of people will attend a meeting and say that they are not. And then they wrote a letter to county council, who's dealing with all sorts of stuff. And I think, what your personal opinion is that it's going to be very difficult to have a digital billboard inside the boundaries of Mount Pleasant, whether it's in the county or actually in the town's confines. It's frankly a loser politically. Anyone who's for a billboard is going to get tagged hard at the polls. And everything else. People don't want to really hear about some of the other stuff. They have a feel. They cite to other communities and in a pejorative way. But intellectually, you just pure intellectual, taking the emotional part out of it. And emotion's important too. I'm not saying, but if you took it out intellectually, you could make a good argument. You add the emotion part, you add the not in my backyard aspect of it, etc. And I think it's politically probably not going to happen. Can it be done legally? Yes, but this council, the past council, and who knows, maybe the future councils, I don't think they'll have the will to succumb to that.
Speaking of future councils, let's talk about single-member districts.
Let's talk about it.
Right downstairs where we sit right now, there's a subcommittee discussing that.
I am not a member of the organization.
Right.
But I think this is going to be a key issue we're in 2017 now.
Right.
Everyone has already identified development and overdevelopment issues, traffic and too much traffic issues, etc. So what is going to be the issue du jour for 2017? And I think based on what I've read in the paper, spoken with people, seen that exactly that. A single member district versus what we have now in Mount Pleasant, which is open. See, let's tell the folks what we're talking about. If you live in the town of Mount Pleasant, every 4 years you elect 4 council members, and every other 4 years the mayor, right? And instead of a person who represents a certain geographical area, like I live near the bridge, so do I have a representative from that represents me in particular? No, I vote for folks no matter where they live within the town. That's called, kind of an open format. The argument is, I'm persuaded that it's a good thing for what it's worth, is that based on our population, which is getting into the close to 90,000 at this point, and our budget, which is 100 million, plus when you look at all the different pails of money that come in from different sources, etc., that like the city of Charleston, like the State House of Representatives, like everything you'd almost virtually think of, that having someone who lives, and they would draw a map, let's just pretend we'll carve the town up into 8 districts for the sake of argument. There's 8 council members, you carve it up into 8 districts, and someone from within that district should be elected, in my view, to represent that district on the town of Mount Pleasant Council. Frankly, there are differences between in needs and wants and desires between the very north end of town and the very south end of town. There's obviously commonality on a lot of things, but there are differences on other things. Water access might be one. If there's a bucket of money that can go to a project, does it need to go into a certain area or not? And I don't see a downside to it, although what we've seen based on letter writing and so forth is that the group of folks who have self-identified themselves as Save Shem Creek have kind of united, at least for now, as opposed to it, and those who have not self-identified as Save Shem Creek have expressed an interest in at least being open to the idea. Your question is a great one. Well, how does it all happen? Not easily. That's the answer. There's 2 directions. The council, and it doesn't appear they're doing this, can vote. They could raise their hands and vote and put the question on the November ballot. Shall we go to single-member districts? It would not. If they voted for that, does not make it single-member district. It simply allows the folks who live here, who vote in the November election, to decide whether that's something they're interested in. The other method is, and I think this is what this, I don't know what they're called, Citizens United, or they have some, they've got a nice name, whatever it is. United Mount Pleasant Citizens or something. What they have to do is collect signatures, and this is no easy task. They have to, as I understand it, and I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, they have to get 15% of the registered voters in the town of Mount Pleasant. And then they have to have the 15%, those signatures have to be collected within, I think, a 6-month period of time. In other words, I can't get a signature 3 years ago and then show up and go, here you go. It has to be a fresh signature. And if you do the math, you remember, while our residents are totaling near 90,000, registered voters, let's just pick a number, maybe half that. Okay. Little people. This isn't Chicago, so 7-year-olds aren't voting, hopefully, and people who are no longer with us are not voting for the most part. So let's say there's 40,000, because I could do math about 40,000. If there are 40,000 registered voters, 15% of that would be 6,000, and they would have to go around and get 6,000 signatures. Now, they started that process, as I understand it, on here or there, but the big splash was in November when we went to the polls and voted for president in the other offices, that they had volunteers asking people to sign on the way in, and I think they made a significant inroad into that number.
Okay.
I don't think they're there yet. Okay. Since then, the town of Mount Pleasant has discussed this at committee level, but I think they haven't taken any formal action. And then just to go one more, in a single member district situation, there are a couple different kinds. You could have a single member, let's say 8 folks from each, or there could be kind of a hybrid model, where you might have single members. You might create 6 districts. This is a for instance, and then have 2 members of town council who are at large, meaning, and I think an example of that, if I'm not mistaken, would be Greenville, South Carolina. It uses the hybrid model. So there's the hybrid model, the pure single member, or the pure at large, which is what we've had now. I think statistically and otherwise that the pure at large model is made sense when the town was a much smaller geographic footprint, a much smaller population footprint. I think strong arguments can be made about going to single member or single member hybrid at this time. And obviously, all the folks who are gathering the signatures are saying is let the folks have a chance to say yay or nay during the election. The folks gathering the signatures cannot turn it into single member. They have no. So the idea, why not put it out there on the ballot and then let the forces, whatever side you're on and whatever direction you come from, in terms of, well, I think it could be divisive, or I think it could be inclusive, or I think that underrepresented groups would have a better chance of having someone on council than in an at-large situation. Why not let the folks have that opportunity to speak in November? The folks who are some folks who are against that don't even want to allow the question to go on the ballot, and I think what's the term? Jump the shark. I don't know if you ever heard that. Yes. I think this might be a jump the shark thing, because the way it gets played out in the newspapers is often that if they get the signatures, it's single member districts and we're done. Not so. All it does is get the question on the ballot. The general election of town council is going to be interesting this year because the mayor's up, and we already know that there's Councilman Haney has announced. And I believe, if she hasn't done so, I believe Mayor Page has stated her intention to rerun. And who else will come out of the woodwork? Right?
Are you running?
No. No. I'm not running. Frankly, for mayor, no. I could not win. I understand. I understand that. And my political future is not hopefully over, but it's in timeout for now. And that's okay. Anyway, thank you. What else is going on?
Oh, that's it.
Hey, man. Thank you.
Chris Nichols, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
You're the best, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.